What's the biggest scandal that happened in your small town? Drama class was interrupted by a cow giving birth in the field across from the school. I was once at the Royal Melbourne show when I was 11 years old. A cow was there who was heavily pregnant. As we were going to leave, the cow went into labor. Lots of people stayed to watch. The labor went way beyond closing time and they allowed everyone to stay beyond closing time. I was at the arse end when the cow came out. As the birth sac broke, the face of the ridiculously cute cow was the picture of WTF with those beautiful calf eyes. It was one of those life moments as an 11-year-old. I'm pretty sure my parents were beyond ready to go home at that point, but they wanted to experience that moment. The only story my dad told me about school was in response to me asking if he had the same English teacher in school that I had. He confirmed that he had her for English, and that her classes were so boring he would look out the window to watch a female dog that was tied to a stake in the backyard of a neighboring house. Every dog in the neighborhood would come to visit. Apparently the whole class ignored the boring lessons and watched the bitch get railed. I can confirm she was mind-numbingly boring, but no sights outside of our class windows. I was in the newer high school. Story 2. My grandparents' small town has had a recent outbreak of teenagers riding horses through the middle of downtown while wearing nothing but face masks. It has happened a total of 3 times now, always with different kids, and always different horses. Story 3. Our newly elected mayor, who is a school teacher as well, caused a head-on car crash injuring 2 small children in the other car. She was found to be drunk and it was 3:30 p.m. on a weekday. The kicker? She wasn't charged with a crime, as of yet, but she did resign after considerable thought. At least she had the decency to resign. I lived near a small town that had a crack addict for a mayor. Like, the dude who got arrested with crack before the election somehow still got elected due to the hatred for the incumbent. Then the mayor got arrested again for crack possession and a separate overdose of crack with a hooker, served his whole term and ran again but lost. This was not recently, more like 15 years ago, but GBI, GA Bureau of Investigation, found a huge field of marijuana growing on our sheriff's land. Well, he owns a lot of land. He denied all knowledge, and they couldn't place him there or find a reason to charge him. However, our conservative community was outraged, and the next term a new sheriff was elected. A little while into the new sheriff's term, several violent criminals, rapists, burglaries, and assaults, etc., escaped from prison in a nearby county, with all local law enforcement thinking they're heading through our area. Days go by, school buses aren't running in certain areas of the county. New sheriff and his deputies haven't come anywhere near catching these dudes. We know this because there is very little to do in a one-horse town, so a good chunk of the population owns police scanners, lol. Finally, the old sheriff steps up, literally single-handedly bringing in 2 of the 3 escapees and has the other pretty much gift-wrapped for the other LEOs. The people of the county decided that a few herbs in a field wasn't that big of a deal, and the old sheriff was soon re-elected. He remained sheriff until he retired many years later. Story 4. I left my small town years ago, but I was home over Thanksgiving and got an earful. The local grocery store was renovated or expanded after 30 years, and now everything's moved and you can't find nothing. I was home for 4 days, and literally every new social interaction with people in town involved the grocery store and how awful it is now. Spoiler, it actually looks quite nice, and they hang signs over the aisles telling you where things are. You know, like a grocery store. I managed one of the stores in my town. We haven't moved anything in over 5 years, and I get people all the time that claim, "Why did you move everything? This isn't where it was last time I was in." Oh god, my town had the exact same problem. The grocery store has had really old, gross white linoleum and bad fluorescent lighting since I was a kid. They finally renovated it, and it looks surprisingly nice. Fake wood floors and warmer lighting, some fresh paint, nothing really over the top, but you get the idea. It ain't bad. It's still a pretty normal grocery store. So now, of course, everyone just bitches endlessly about how they wasted all that money just to turn it into a hippie store. Because earth tones, I guess. That sounds pretty similar to my small hometown. I went back for Thanksgiving for the first time in over 20 years. My parents recently moved back to get ready to retire there. Anyway, everyone was talking about how the family who owned the local grocery store decided to sell it so that they could retire. This was the second generation to run it. I guess the third generation had no interest in taking over. But yeah, it was the big news in town. I'm sure I'll get to hear all about what the new owners change when the takeover is final. I can't wait. Oh gosh, this is like the small town scandal in my hometown that my dad told me about at Thanksgiving. There's one grocery store, IGA, in town that's been owned by the same family since the 1890s. The owner is selling it because he's retiring. His son has worked there for as long as I can remember. Apparently the son had no interest in taking it over, so he quit and went to work somewhere else around the time it was announced that they were looking for a buyer. They haven't found one yet. The whole town is in an uproar over it, and a lot of people aren't going there anymore. They're choosing to drive 40 minutes to the next closest grocery store instead. A lot of grocery stores are changing their layouts to deliberately more confusing ones. The idea is to group items by similar price points rather than by similar items, which I guess helps them streamline their price discrimination by having fancy aisles and budget aisles. You might have noticed this for some time with cheese, which can generally be in two separate places in the store. One for the fancy imported cheeses and one for the no-name brands. Well, now everything is arranged like that. Salad dressing in 3 places, that cookie you like not with the other cookies in the aisle but over on the fancy cookie shelf. A lot of thought and effort goes into this on the part of the store. The idea, of course, is to maximize every customer's spending while in the store. From the customer's perspective, this new philosophy of organization does make shopping take longer, and comparison shopping of similar products is more difficult. I've lived in a small town where the only supermarket underwent this change, and believe me, it's unsettling. Story 5. A teacher posted a link to a porn site on his website for classwork instead of the recent assignment and got fired immediately. Apparently, this wasn't his first offense. There was a teacher at my middle school, when I was younger, who was fired for not just watching porn at school, but also accidentally having it open on his computer when he went to project something to a class. I don't know how people can be so stupid. If this is about a small town in upstate New York, it wasn't his first offense. About 5 years ago, he was caught looking down on female students' shirts and asking them to stay after class with him, and he was told to take a break. One of our teachers got caught with having cameras in the girls' locker room and having the videos at school in the 70s or 80s. My mom was either in school or recently graduated when he got caught. He retired a few years ago with multiple teacher and coach awards under his belt. Every girl knew low-cut tops and short shorts could get you better grades when I was in school, but was also aware of where all his cameras in the classroom were. I don't know what his justification was, or if he put it there, or if he had to have it there, or how long it had been there, but there was this one in the front that basically recorded the whole classroom, except behind his desk, and was on at all times. The only other room that had one was the Spanish teacher who taught another school remotely with it, and a grade school classroom that he taught psychology classes in. Before I started high school, my mom sat me down and was basically like, don't be alone with him. Wear a hoodie when you can, don't bend over if you can help it. He's a pervert, but no one will do anything about it. We had a teacher in high school who accidentally put a corn video on the projector in front of the whole class. He had just been displaying the assignment and thought that he had hit the freeze button to have the projector freeze the image on the screen so that he could do other things on the computer. But he did not. The whole class gasped and laughed, and he even got mad and said to quiet down once before realizing what we were gasping about. Story 6. The school gym teacher was fired after being caught pleasuring himself in the equipment room. He was caught by 2 students. A few days later, he killed himself. Everyone is a bit shaken up about it. Jesus. So many things can be just fixed by leaving the damn state or country. Suicide is so crazy as a reaction to a scandal, especially a small one like this. 1. Lots of people in small towns live there their entire lives. It's possible, though not confirmed, that this man's entire family and social circle were aware of what he'd done. 2. This kind of thing makes you a registered S offender, even if he managed to avoid prison. Instantly fired, never working in a school again. And if you're a gym teacher, you have almost 0 professional options outside of that. So his professional life is over. He's either flipping burgers or going into a decade of debt for a new degree. Most of the people he's ever known are actively shunning him. The guy made a huge mistake. It's not hard to understand why he couldn't see any way out. It's not always practical to leave a state, let alone a country. I'm divorced and I have joint custody of my kids. A public shaming of me doesn't mean my ex is going to move somewhere else with me. So you can get stuck. Add to that, masturbating in an equipment room and being seen by students could absolutely force a sex offender registration, and now you're not moving anywhere without permission. I'd say that receiving communities are probably less inclined to eagerly embrace a new S-offender. Story 7. Somebody's been murdering horses and PD is blaming wild boars, but at least a couple of the horses were shot. So, back in the 70s, my grandparents found a couple of their cows dead way back in one of their pastures. They were gutted with the organs in 2 neat piles. The udders, eyes, and tongues were missing. The local sheriff just said, they cut themselves on a piece of tin or barbed wire and bled to death, and refused to look into it more. Everyone in town assumed it was some cult or something. Kind of OT, but feral swine are crossing the border of Canada here into Montana, and people are up in arms about it. I get it, it's bad for agriculture and apparently they murder horses, but it's all our small town talks about. Damn illegal homicidal feral swine. The state of South Carolina could care less about the welfare of any animal. There are very few laws protecting animals in South Carolina. Most importantly, though, those who are found guilty of crimes against animals in this state rarely suffer more than the minimum fine. The only reason they've even reacted to this is because people are raising hell. Story 8. The town wanted to decommission the airport. The people did not. The people won. Usually it's the other way around. People buy 20-year-old houses next to a 45-year-old airport, then complain about the noise and petition to get the airport shut down. There's actually a huge amount of funding and research that goes into airport noise abatement. I got my degree in this. It's true. Hella studies are done. Similar note, my mom works in a town council doing development approvals and other building-related stuff. Here's what happens. Once or twice a year, some fat Sydney-sider property mogul with white shoes and a blue business shirt drives up in Merc and toodles through the town. He sees all this flat, empty land just sitting in the middle of town doing nothing right on the river. Comes back a few years later, sees it still empty, buys it up for peanuts where he can, and then puts in a DA to create Gyprock Acres Estates. And the DA comes back with a big fat rejected stamp on it. Flood zone, you see? Rah, 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 BS, it was dry as a bone, hasn't flooded at all, rah, rah, council, rah. I was here in 2014 and 2016 and it was dry and the river was low. And the real estate guy gets absolutely livid. He turns up at council meetings, raises hell, tries to get the local paper involved, then of course, as is traditional, lawyers up and then see you in court. Council's defense basically involves getting one of their surveyors/environment guys to take the stand and significant flood records and depths for the blocks of land in question. 2011, 1.4 meters. 2009, 1.2 meters. 2008, 0.9 meters. 2000, 1.9 meters. 1996, 2.1 meters. 1993, 1 meter. 1987, 1.3 meters. 1980, 0.7 meters. 1977, 1.4 meters. 1973, 1.4 meters. Thank you, says the judge. We brought records back to 1900. That's fine, case dismissed. Applicant to pay all costs. Story 9. A couple of months ago, someone left their fire pit in their driveway for a few days. They received a mailed letter from an anonymous neighbor shaming them for making the neighborhood look bad. The recipient then posted the letter on the town's Facebook page. People ran with it and created the first annual front yard fire night. I once had a neighbor who would complain in the HOA Facebook group about how his neighbor would set cups on his fence. It became such a joke because he would literally post pictures of the cups on the fence and complain about how the HOA wouldn't fine his neighbor for doing such a terrible thing. So we all started posting pictures of cups on the street, or on our cars, following us to work, etc. The guy called us assholes and left the group. At first, I was like, how did they leave their fire pit in the driveway? Then I remembered that those portable fire rings are still a thing. Still seems a bit odd in a small town. Most I know just have an actual fire pit in the backyard, dug into the ground. Story 10. The town went with the lowest bidder for a big roadwork contract, and it turns out they were totally unqualified for the job and were messing stuff up. So the town fired them and hired the second lowest bidder, same thing. They're on their third contractor now, if I recall correctly, and the project, which was supposed to be done this summer, will hopefully be finished sometime next year. And this, my friends, is why pre-qualification processes exist. For the love of God, implement pre-qualification and screening processes. It saves so many headaches and so much money. Unfortunately, we live in a lowest bidder world. For example, building a house. You hire a construction company to build a home for you. You shop around for the one that can do it the cheapest. They hire the lowest bidding architects to draw up the plans. They hire the lowest bidding contractors to do the actual construction work. They source the materials from the lowest bidding materials vendor. They hire the lowest bidding plumbers. They hire the lowest bidding electricians. Basically, what you end up with is a low-quality house made from the cheapest materials that meet building codes, assembled by the cheapest people possible. A reason why finding a good contractor is like a pot of gold. You can get the lowest bidders who do good work because they make relationships with their subs and suppliers to meet those quality and reputation standards, but it's few and far between. I was actually working for a mechanical contractor for a while, and they were well known in the area for doing great work, and often won public university and hospital bids because they had a very tight network of suppliers for ordering decent materials. The European way to award contracts is far superior to the American way, in my opinion. Instead of the lowest bidder, which American governments are generally required to award the bidder to, European governments eliminate any bids outside of the standard deviation from the mean, and find the median price of those remaining to award the bid. Story 11. The guy who's been trolling our town's community Facebook page finally got banned. We have a community Facebook troll as well. I always wondered what it would be like to run into him in person. I imagine while grocery shopping he just spews random crap that no one pays attention to. Last year, my area had a cat mutilator. It was horrific stuff. They found a skinless dog in the woods and thought the killer was escalating, but a local vet stepped forward and said the dog, a Bernese mountain dog, had been euthanized due to old age. The family wanted to stuff the animal, so after the pelt was taken, the vet dumped the body in the woods so he wouldn't have to pay for whatever specialized services dispose of dead animals. We had one a little while ago. His name was Darius. Not the troll's real name or the real name of the guy whose pictures the troll stole. And in any case, Darius turned out to not be real, and our small town finest internet detectives managed to find the real Darius, whose name was completely different, and he apologized specifically to our town's Facebook group and assured us he didn't know where our town was, had never heard of it, and never went by the name Darius. It was all very weird and very exciting. Lucky, my local Facebook page is run by the city and they have expressed their intent to not censor a single post. Meanwhile, someone running a bunch of accounts, I think, is using them to comment on hateful things and post racist memes across every single post. And they won't do a damn thing. Preemptive laughter at the people who will comment to report it to Facebook. That obviously doesn't work. Story 12. A local police department likes to post wanted pictures on its Facebook page. The other day, I saw one of their crappy wanted postings of some woman who is allegedly evading police for drug charges and intent to distribute. The suspect herself commented on the post and said, "I'm not evading, I'm not on the run, I've been out of town, and when I come back, I'm turning myself in." Maybe not a scandal, but I thought that was pretty funny. On my local police page, they posted a wanted ad for a woman who had failed to appear in court. A different woman commented on the photo, basically slacking off the wanted woman. She responded with, "Shut up, Carrie, at least I haven't sucked off every dealer in the Wistanley estate." My hometown isn't that small, like 20k people I think, but not a city or anything. A kid a couple of years ahead of me in school was apparently wanted on a warrant for dealing drugs. It was a small enough town the police went to social media trying to track him down and get a tip line going, and people let him know. I thought it was funny. The first comment on their Facebook page was, "I wasn't on the run, I'm on vacation with my family, and wasn't given any notice that the police wanted to talk to me. I'll rent a car and drive home tomorrow and be in the police station. You guys can sleep easy tonight." He ended up getting some minor pot charges, but since he was known as the local head stoner, they were all out in force, and this kid was trying to get out of Dodge and go underground, when really he was just on a weekend trip with his parents and little sisters. Story 13. Our city council just voted to give themselves a 103% raise. In some places, city councilors are in stipend positions and are not paid much. I've lived in places where the councilor's pay was less than $1,000 per year and hadn't been raised in 20 years. When someone finally said that it wasn't worth the time to serve and that it would affect who ran/got elected, the city raised the pay to $3,000 a year. Yeah, that's 200%, but it was still very little money for the responsibilities. People howled at the massive increase but ignored the context. But yeah, sometimes it's a BS move by hack politicians. I have to say, depending on how much the town has grown since wages were last adjusted or how long it has been since the wages had been adjusted, that might be fair. Our state once had a leader who refused to approve wage increases for the leaders, and he was in charge for more than a decade. When he stepped down, the wages of the legislature had stagnated for so long that staffers were getting paid more than the representatives, since the staffers had union agreements that would include raises. Just to be that guy for a minute, it would help to know how to feel about this if you tell us what they made in the first place or do now, as some government work is criminally underpaid, making it a requirement for someone to be rich to start with to survive being in office. For example, Oregon legislators got a raise this year to $31,200 plus $149 per diem for meals and lodging while in session, and it's becoming a bit of a thing in state politics. Story 14. During my sister's volleyball game once, one of the super aggressive sports dads slapped someone else's kid because apparently she set the ball into a bad positioning, and that caused his daughter to miss the spike. 1. His kid is crap at the game. 2. I played volleyball for a long-ass time and my mom sent me footage of the set. She set that ball beautifully for the small league that she's in. 3. They won the game. Just be happy. The entire community is turned against him right now, and the family of the girl is considering pressing charges, which I feel they should, because this guy has gotten close to crossing the line before, and he needs to be reprimanded for his actions. A lot of you have commented about how he didn't get his ass beat at the game. No one had the chance because immediately realized he messed up and ran out to his car. He drove away, leaving his kid to be embarrassed and alone in a full court of people pissed at her dad. One of the nice moms gave her a ride back to her house where she spent the night. And on a happier note, I've just learned from my mom that charges are being pressed, and investigations into the living conditions in his house are being conducted. I'll update you when the results come in. Not only is he getting punished for slapping another person's child, but because of this incident, his home life was looked into, and it was found he beat his wife and child. He's now not only going away for aggravated assault, but also child and domestic abuse. His wife is filing for a divorce because in an interview she said, "She really wanted to for a long time. I was just terrified of what he would do to me." Luckily, the woman is getting all the assets and custody of their daughter. I don't know exactly how long his sentence is, but I know he won't be welcome back in our town once he's out. But for now, our little town can go back to being happy again, and I think everyone is thankful for that. Few things will nuke your faith in humanity faster than observing the parents at youth sporting events. The younger the kids, the more frivolous the league, and the worse the parents are too. I saw 2 grown-ass 40-plus-year-old coaches get in a fistfight over a traveling call in a 3rd grade girls' rec league basketball game. Meanwhile, all the little girls on both teams were just taking a knee on the court and happily chatting away with each other until the adults could let them play again. My roommate in college had to volunteer to scorekeep for a girls' youth basketball tournament and asked me to help out where I had next to zero training and was running the clock. There were maybe 3 seconds left in the game, and I may have hit the clock to start a millisecond before the girl's hand touched the ball, which I will admit was my mistake. But you would have thought I took a crap on the floor for how pissed everyone was. The score difference was over 10 points, so no amount of clock magic was going to fix it, but try telling that to a pissed off Wisconsin dad. Story 15. My small town includes a pretty large zoo, and a tapir has recently escaped and is still at large. This reminds me, once in the city where I used to live, a red panda escaped on his first day of being at his new enclosure. It was a big city and all the trains were shut down because they thought they had seen him next to the train tracks. Turned out that he was just sleeping in a tree next to the enclosure. I'll never forget the day a tiny little red panda shut down the whole train traffic because he was sleeping in a tree. They didn't find the tapir yet? How could you not find a tapir? Dude, in my city, 2 capybaras escaped the zoo and were wandering around in a park for over a month. They are now called Bonnie and Clyde. One morning, my mom ran into my bedroom yelling at me excitedly to come to the door quickly but be quiet. I didn't quite know how to take it. Well, it was 5:30 a.m. in northwest Indiana, and lo and behold, there was a peacock in our yard, feathers spread, strutting proudly. I hadn't expected that. Later that day, a gaggle of them ran down the street surprisingly fast. The poor neighborhood dogs had no clue how to react. Turns out there was an old, elaborate house turned wedding venue that lost a few of its birds that morning. Learning this did not necessarily clarify anything. Next to my school is a small farm and some animal enclosures for the little elementary school kids to come learn about the animals and whatnot. The actual farm is attached to the high school, and some peacocks will occasionally escape from the farm. Our high school campus also has loads of stray cats. Sometimes I'd be walking to my next class and a friend of mine would say, "Check this cat out," and we'd look at the cat and maybe try to pet it. A while back, I was walking with a friend and he said, "Check this cat out," and I turned and there was a freaking peacock. No, I did not pet it. Story 16. We have a tourist train that runs from town A to town B. It was a particularly dry summer and the train started a fire that spread over 75,000 acres. The town is now suing the train station for loss of income. As we are a tourist town and our income is solely based on tourism and no one wants to go tour a smoky town in Colorado. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I think it's in the ballpark of tens of millions of dollars. Holy crap, I got turned around on the 550 going north from Durango due to that fire. Was on a motorcycle vacation and just passed Lower Hermosa campground. The road was blocked and the sky was gray as hell. Ended up taking Route 149 through Lake City and still drove through a ton of smoke, hoping the whole time that the fire was controllable. Sad to hear it got so bad. That's a beautiful area. Sounds like Silverton. I was up there back in July of 18, and you could still smell the burnt trees in the area while driving up towards Mullis Pass on 550. I loved visiting Silverton, but it doesn't feel the same with all those recent houses that were built in the valley. However, I'm happy to say that the funnel cake shop that my grandparents started back in '87 is still going. What's infuriating about all of this is they chose to run the coal engine they love so much, which rains hot coal from the sky after it bellows out, instead of using the diesel engine. The train starts hundreds of little fires every year because of the coal, but usually they can put them out with their own crew. Nobody really seems to want the train to go away here, it seems, but they've got to stop using that damn coal engine. A lot of people I speak with would love it if it was converted to an updated commuter train that would take people up to Silverton quickly. This reminds me of when I was an active member of a local heritage railroad here. During the high summer months, they ran a specific fire lookout/fighting train among the other passenger trains. Was a diesel locomotive with a single car with a large tank of water as well as a petrol-powered water pump. I don't remember having to actually fight any fire, but one time on an empty passenger train we saw that a fire had just started and we were able to put it out before the fire department came. They took care of the site and we continued on. Story 17. My grandfather comes from a small town with less than 5,000 people, and it is kind of spread around into smaller districts. So essentially his district has about 500 people, and the bakery turns into a bar at night. I grew up going there at least twice a month until I was 14, and once a month until I moved abroad for a while. Despite being such a small town and greeting the mayor, who was the local butcher every time my family needed to buy something, the butcher shop was also the second biggest market in town. We had big town issues. One of the biggest issues was corruption, and since the town planned on expanding, building a new public school and whatnot, they got some extra funds from the state. Our friendly butcher/mayor decided to crack down on the folks that were stealing public money, and he ended up being shot to death by two men in a motorcycle in front of his 6-year-old while they were playing in a park near one of the main squares. I was in town that weekend, and everyone was instructed to lock all windows and doors since the two men weren't caught. All lights were out by 7 p.m. and I could not think of a more terrifying evening than all my time spent there, with the exception of when 3 years later, a jaguar decided to visit me at midnight in my little bedroom outside the main farmhouse. When someone gets shot over a reason like that, said criminal generally doesn't go house to house looking to cause more trouble with people. There's a crap ton of people looking for him or her, and the last thing they want to do is shine a spotlight on their exact location by getting into shootouts in the middle of the street overlooking for a house to hide in. Generally, they will go to a local safe location, ex-friend's house, and get out of town after a few hours, or hightail it instantly in a car or on foot, depending on how many roads out of town there are. TLDR, houses that may have people in them are really freaking bad to try to hide in. you'd have better luck just turning yourself into the police. Well, I believe the plan was to get out of state. The town is in a rural area, so they came from the downtown district into my grandfather's district. My grandfather has a sizable piece of land in the area, and we did hear news that they were sighted in the surroundings. That's why we went on full alert. Any engine heard on the farm road that night was terrifying. That particular road is quite narrow and goes through the most rural areas of the town. Unlike the main town road, it was never even cemented. It's all dirt, and it borders my grandpa's property, main house, and farm gate. Story 18. It's more of a village, but turns out the now 90-year-old teacher that everyone had as a teacher wasn't just really forgetful. Turns out she was in a car crash and got short-term memory loss. I have short-term memory loss from a car accident. My phone is a lifesaver. I have alerts set for everything. I also post notes everywhere, and my daughter helps me keep track. At work, I have a list of daily tasks that need to be done, and my boss knows to text my instructions because if he tells me, I will forget. I totally forgot about my son's doctor's appointment this week. I was supposed to pick him up after school and take him for a checkup. I forgot to put the alert in my phone and got a call from him wondering why I was not there. All I could say was I forgot. He understands. He lives with it every day. Even my kids text me stuff they want me to remember. I read old text messages every day to try to make sure I haven't forgotten anything, and it doesn't always work. My long-term memory is fantastic. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel.